The call came in the early hours of August 31st, 19... Devastating words. Elton John felt his world collapse. Diana was gone. Only weeks earlier, they had finally made peace after a painful misunderstanding. Now, there would be no second chance, no private conversation at Kensington Palace, no laughter over celebrity gossip, no teasing beside the piano. The woman who had brought warmth into the coldest rooms in Britain had vanished, and Elton was left with grief, guilt, and one impossible request. He was being asked to sing at her funeral. Their story had begun 16 years earlier, in 1981, when the world was captivated by the image of a young princess stepping into royal life. Elton John was already one of the most famous musicians on the planet. He had performed before. Enormous crowds met presidents, celebrities, and members of royal families. Yet when he was invited to a royal event that year, he expected the usual atmosphere. Formal greetings, controlled smiles, careful conversations, people standing at a respectful distance from one another. Elton immediately noticed that she was different. She did not behave like someone protected by a title or hidden behind ceremony. She was warm, open, funny, and completely genuine. She had a natural ability to make people relax. The tension around her seemed to disappear. She listened closely, laughed freely, and made even famous people feel that they were the only person in the room. Elton later remembered that Diana could make him laugh uncontrollably. Their friendship began almost at once. It was an unlikely connection between a global pop star and a future princess, but it was built on something neither fame nor royalty could manufacture. They shared compassion, humor, and an understanding of what it meant to live under constant public attention. Their friendship was never formal. Diana did not treat Elton like a performer invited to entertain the royal household, and Elton did not treat her like a distant public figure. They joked, gossiped, and laughed about the absurdities of fame. In private, the ceremony disappeared. At Kensington Palace, Diana could remove her shoes, relax, and speak without measuring every word. She loved pop music. She enjoyed dancing. She followed celebrity stories and could laugh at the strange behavior of famous people, including Elton himself. Around him, she did not have to perform the role of a perfect princess. Elton remembered that she could become playful, almost childlike, as if she had escaped for a few hours from every expectation placed upon her. Elton knew the destructive side of fame. He knew what it could do to confidence, relationships, and mental strength. Diana was discovering the same truth inside the royal family. Her marriage to Prince Charles was falling apart. The press followed every movement. Private pain became public entertainment. Every expression was photographed. Every friendship was analyzed. Every mistake became a headline. Elton watched helplessly as the woman who had once filled rooms with laughter struggled under the weight of heartbreak and constant judgment. He saw how deeply she wanted to be loved, not as an image, not as a royal symbol, but as a human being. Diana could offer comfort to strangers with extraordinary ease, yet she often seemed unable to find lasting comfort for herself. The misunderstanding involved their mutual friend, the Italian designer Gianni Versace. Elton and Diana had both known him, and his death shocked them. According to Elton's later account, he and Diana had expected to attend Versace's funeral together. Then someone within Diana's circle reportedly advised her to keep her distance from Elton. The concern was that being seen with him might create more public drama. Elton did not understand what had happened. He believed Diana no longer wanted to see him. The thought crushed him. After years of private jokes, honest conversations, and emotional support, he felt rejected without explanation. Diana was also hurt, but neither of them reached out. Pride, confusion, and outside influence created a silence between two people who had once trusted each other completely. The distance did not last forever. Only weeks later, Diana called Elton unexpectedly. Her voice was gentle. She wanted to end the conflict. Life was too short to continue fighting, she told him. They made peace during that call. The misunderstanding was finally pushed aside, and the friendship that had begun in 1981 seemed ready to continue. On August, Elton received the news in the early morning. A friend called and told him Diana was gone. For several moments, he could not understand the words. He froze. The news felt impossible, like something from a nightmare that would disappear when he woke up. The world was soon overwhelmed by shock. Millions of people gathered outside palaces, churches, and public buildings. Flowers covered the streets. Television networks interrupted normal programming. Her face appeared on every screen and every newspaper. Yet for Elton, the loss was not the death of a distant public figure. Elton sat at his piano and could not play. Tears came, but the music did not. The instrument that had carried him through nearly every emotional crisis suddenly felt useless. He later described the moment as if the light had gone out of the world. Then came the request that terrified him. Elton John was asked to perform at Diana's funeral. He understood that millions would be watching. He also understood that the royal family, Diana's sons and people who had loved her, would be listening. A normal performance was impossible. He needed to honor the person he knew, not only the public image. Diana had been kind, funny, emotional, brave, and deeply human. The tribute had to carry all of that. Elton turned to Bernie Taupin, his longtime lyricist and creative partner. Together, they revisited Candle in the Wind, a song originally written about Marilyn Monroe. The melody was already known around the world, but the words needed to speak directly to Diana's life, her compassion and the grief spreading across Britain. The new version opened with a farewell to England's rose. It described a woman whose courage and humanity had reached far beyond palace walls. The lyrics transformed a familiar song into a national goodbye. At the funeral, Elton took his place at the piano. The atmosphere was heavy with grief. Diana's family sat nearby. Her two sons were mourning their mother in front of the world. Members of the royal family remained composed, but the scale of emotion inside the building was impossible to hide. His voice carried the strain of personal loss. This was not a concert performance. There was no showmanship, no attempt to dominate the moment. He was trying to survive each line without breaking down. The words about England's rose moved through the church and into homes around the world. Even Queen Elizabeth, known for maintaining control Elton later, said it was the hardest performance of his life. He barely managed to finish. Every note reminded him that Diana was no longer there to laugh, tease him, or tell him that he was being too dramatic. The rewritten version of Candle in the Wind went on to become an extraordinary global success. It sold more than 30 million copies and was described as the best-selling single of all time. Yet Elton refused to treat the song as a commercial victory. He did not want to profit from the death of his friend. Every penny was directed to Diana's charitable causes. The money supported work involving children, people affected by AIDS, and those living in poverty. Elton believed that Diana would have wanted the success of the song to help the people she had spent years defending. The decision reflected the strongest part of Diana's legacy. She had used her position to approach people whom society often ignored. She sat beside AIDS patients at a time when fear and misinformation surrounded the disease. She visited homeless communities. She walked through areas affected by landmines. She touched people others were afraid to touch. After the funeral, however, he could not escape the grief. Diana's image was everywhere. Magazine covers displayed her face. News programs replayed scenes from her life. Strangers constantly asked Elton to speak about her. The public wanted memories, but every memory reopened the wound. For months, Elton struggled to play the piano. Music had always been his refuge, but now almost every note brought Diana back. He remembered her, sitting nearby, listening, laughing, and criticizing his dramatic style. The piano became a reminder of everything that could never happen again. Elton wished he had told Diana more clearly how deeply he loved her as a friend. He regretted allowing the misunderstanding to separate them for as long as it did. Although they had reconciled, he felt that the peace came too late. He kept returning to the same thought. Diana had been lonely, and she needed people who cared about her without demanding anything in return. That regret changed the way Elton viewed his own life. He began to reconsider fame, friendship, and the people he allowed close to him. Diana had shown him that status could not protect a person from pain. A palace could still feel empty. Global admiration could exist beside private loneliness. The loudest applause could not replace one honest conversation. To Elton, Diana's greatest legacy was not her title, beauty, clothing, or position in the royal family. It was her heart. He said she made compassion fashionable. She showed that a famous person could use attention to direct the world toward suffering that others preferred not to see. Her influence continued through Elton's own humanitarian work. Through the Elton John AIDS Foundation, he carried forward the belief that fame should be used for change rather than vanity. Diana's willingness to stand beside people rejected by society became a model for his own public mission. Years after the funeral, Elton revealed another private detail. He had received a personal letter from Queen Elizabeth II, thanking him for the tribute. According to Elton, the Queen believed his performance had captured the grief of the nation. Decades passed, but the emotional power of Candle in the Wind did not disappear. Audiences still cried when they heard the melody. Elton rarely performed the Diana version. It was too painful. He believed the song belonged to her and to the moment when the world stopped to say goodbye. Diana also became an important voice during Elton's darkest struggles. In the story, Elton later revealed that her care and humor helped him during periods of addiction. She did not flatter him or ignore what was happening. She challenged him. She reminded him that his talent should not be wasted. That honesty mattered, because it came from someone who understood what it meant to be surrounded by people who often said only what they believed a famous person wanted to hear. Diana could be compassionate without being weak. She could offer love while still demanding change. In a 2023 interview mentioned in the account, Elton finally expressed what he had carried for decades. He said Diana had saved him from himself. Elton also spoke about Diana's sons. He wished she could see the world as it had changed. He believed she would be proud of William and Harry. Whatever disagreements surrounded the royal family, he continued to see them through the memory of the young mother he had known, not the princess from magazine covers, not the symbol frozen forever in photographs, not only England's rose. To Elton, she remained the woman who removed her shoes at Kensington Palace, laughed at celebrity gossip, danced to pop music, teased him beside the piano, and called to end a pointless argument because life was too short. The world remembers the funeral, the piano, and the song heard by billions. Elton remembers the laughter. He remembers the private sadness behind Diana's smile. He remembers the courage that allowed her to touch people society had abandoned. He remembers the friend who could make him laugh uncontrollably and still tell him when he was destroying himself. Candle in the Wind became a global tribute, but the deepest tribute was what Elton did afterward. He refused to profit from the song. He directed its success toward Diana's causes. He continued fighting for people affected by AIDS. He used his fame to challenge stigma, raise money, and demand compassion. More than 30 million copies of the song were sold, but no number could measure what had been lost on August 31st, 1997. The sales, the headlines, and the historic broadcast belonged to the public story. Elton's private story was simpler and more painful. The friendship between Elton John and Princess Diana did not survive because it was convenient. It survived because beneath fame and royalty they saw each other clearly. Diana saw the vulnerable manatee behind the superstar. Elton saw the lonely woman behind the princess. Years later, the grief remained, but so did the gratitude. Diana had helped him laugh. She had challenged him during addiction. She had inspired his charity work. She had shown him that kindness mattered more than fame and more than status. For Elton John, Diana was never only a chapter in royal history. She was the friend who brought light into darkness, the woman whose courage redirected his life, and the voice that still seemed to remind him not to waste the time he had been given.